Welcome, 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 welcome. Have you ever heard the expression, you can take the horse to the river, but you cannot force it to drink? Or maybe you've heard, let's just take the bull by the horn. Or you've learned biting the bullet. Now, that one is quite difficult. But today I'm going to tell you why those idiomatic expressions matter a lot. For me personally, I like to take a leap of faith as opposed to looking before I leap. So let's start from COVID 2020, right? When COVID arrived in Ecuador, it was, I'm sorry about that noise. Let me close my door. It's very, very hot here in Ecuador, but let's get let's get started. So, as I was saying before the noise interrupted, when COVID came to Ecuador, it was very, very serious actually, especially in the city where I currently live, and I've been living actually since I came. So death became very imminent. Death was a reality, right? I was facing death in the eye. Um, and the only thing that came to mind, because my neighbors were losing relatives, and I thought, well, I can't avoid dying in a strange country if death has to come and take me. But what will I be remembered for? And I thought of that. I've made mistakes in my life. Okay, fine. I've made right. But what would I want myself? What would I want to achieve before death came for me? And the only thing that made me sad, hello, the beauty, how are you? Hello, Rassan Omer, welcome. The only thing that really made me sad was I had not gone to the university. Now, I'm a nurse by profession and I went to nursing college. So I was really sad about that. And I told myself if I should survive COVID, I would go back to school. Online, of course, because at the moment I can't really enroll in a university or, get a formal education. And for many people, if you don't know, you can actually study online. There are free universities that give you free courses, for 6 weeks, 2 months. I enrolled with Coursera, Coursera. Coursera was a very beautiful place, and I did quite a few courses. You can study for free, or you can pay and then have permanent access to the lessons. And I enjoyed it because there was a forum where you could speak with other students. Now and then there were short videos from the teachers. But I realized the one thing I wasn't really good was that I wasn't good at learning was I needed structure, right? So because I didn't have that structure, after we survived the COVID, my intensity of study started winning down. But the only thing that brought me, that I learned out of that, was my passion, which is a passion for learning languages, because I had already learned Spanish because I live in a Spanish-speaking country. And so I began learning all the languages I had dreamed of learning. So I started with Italian, and I was learning Italian. Then I wanted to learn Portuguese, but Portuguese was so difficult. Personally, I find it more difficult than French at the time, actually, even up till now. I think it's much more difficult than French because they've got so many nasal sounds, and Brazilian Portuguese has got so many twists in pronunciation, the chi sounds, the j sound, which is very recurrent as they speak. And I think at the time I didn't want to learn to commit to it. So I started learning all those languages, but I wasn't speaking. And like I've said many times on my channel, The essence of learning a language is to communicate. You have to speak it. And what language, being a self-taught student, has taught me is that you don't have to be afraid of making mistakes. It's like when you say you want to lose weight, you have to go to the gym, you have to exercise, you have to move your body, or you have to change your diet. You have to do something. It cannot end up here in your head. So I started speaking, like shadow practice, and I was doing a lot of shadow practice. But what I discovered with shadow practice was that I pronounced better, but I still wasn't able to speak. And what a lot of teachers will tell you is not to think in your language or want to translate to another language, from another language. You have to learn to think in the language that you are learning, which is good, but then it means bringing the language into your daily life. At least for me, that's what worked. So I started that, and then I think in 2023, I forced myself to open my YouTube channel, L'autodidacta, uh, to start speaking directly in front of the camera. I made it deliberately a live session, principally so that I wouldn't have to check the dictionary or use an app to translate. That way I was going to be forced to just speak and make my mistakes and then go back and learn. And that has really, really helped me a long way with learning Italian. And then the following year, I started learning French all over again. Now, the thing is, that pattern has worked for me because the more you speak, the more you pronounce better, the more you understand. So the language becomes part of your life. So I thought, okay, if I can speak French, I can speak Italian, and I speak Spanish, why don't I go back to Portuguese? In actuality, Portuguese is very, very close to Spanish of the four Romance language. And that made me start learning. So what I normally do as a tradition is that on my birthday, I would launch the speaking practice on my channel, Autodidacta. So you can look for it. Autodidacta is AU Auto DICTATA. I wrote it in Spanish. Autodidacta for Ken. And so I would launch that on my birthday. So I launched that for Italian, and I launched that for French. So this year I launched that for Portuguese, and I discovered it was super, super difficult. And I was disappointed, but actually, when I sat down and thought about it, I discovered one thing. I had taken my language acquisition for granted. For the fact that I learned easily Italian, I thought I would acquire Portuguese that fast. And then I realized something. I wanted to take the shortcut simply because my Spanish has now improved. Hello, Merily, welcome. For the simple fact that my Spanish has improved, I thought I would just naturally acquire Portuguese. Because if you speak Spanish, you can understand the Portuguese when they speak a little bit slowly. And if you speak Portuguese, you can understand when a Spanish-speaking person speaks. They are quite similar when they speak, but the writing is different. And I think the Brazilian Portuguese is much, much closer to, I would say, the Portuguese spoken in Portugal. It's closer to French, and Brazilian Portuguese is closer to Spanish. That's my opinion, I think, because I understand both languages. So I took the bullet. I bit the bullet by the I just had to bite the bullet literally, and started learning from scratch. What I did was I got a teacher. It's called Decoding with Andrew on YouTube, in case you're English speaking and you want to learn Portuguese. He's an excellent teacher. So he starts with greetings, how to say goodbyes, then the pronunciation. He gives us a pronunciation lesson. And so gradually I began to be able to follow a teacher who teaches the language in her language, meaning the Portuguese classes now are in Portuguese. And what that has taught me is that I've been able to face my fears. That has been able to make me to take that bull, which is Portuguese language, by the horn and look at it in the eye and say, I'm going to learn you. I'm going to handle you. And actually, to me, that's biting the bullet. And what that taught me about learning is that a lot of times I think the system with which we learn, the way we approach the topic or the subject may be wrong. Not necessarily that the subject itself is difficult, no, but the approach. If you are in high school, or you were in high school, you know that the majority of us didn't like maths. And for me, I began to pick an interest, or maths began to pick my interest when I was in my final year in high school, because of the teacher who taught the subject. So it is not the subject that is difficult, it is actually the approach to the subject. And I just wanted to share with you that it is the same thing with so many things in life. The problem actually might not be the situation, it might be the way you're handling the situation yourself. For example, my English teacher used to say, a problem that cannot be solved must be born. You have to learn to live with it. And so I really, really wanted to do that for myself. And I really felt embarrassed on my channel, because I normally, when I start learning a language, I would even go like maybe twice or 3 or 4 times a week and do practice, but I didn't do that with Portuguese. So not being able to speak Portuguese after taking Portuguese lessons now for 4 months was really like, a deal breaker for me to say, there's something wrong. I am intelligent, I've learned other languages, I've taught myself actually all the languages that I speak. So what's wrong with Portuguese? So the actuality was that there was still some residue of fear that has not allowed me to face my Portuguese lessons head on, to take my Portuguese lessons head on. So that's what I did, and now eu falo português, posso falar pouco de português. Me gosto de aprender português, and it's so, refreshing that I can actually speak the language bit by bit, but actually I am learning to learn the language. So it is with more intention that I listen to the videos. I go straight ahead, I do the whole three. I learn the words, the new words, and the lesson for the day. So like, for example, she'll say we're learning the verb to be. Eu sou da Nigeria, and so there's so many things to learn just in that one sentence. So there's the conjugation of ser, the preposition da, because Nigeria ends with a, so eu sou da Nigeria, the Portuguese. And so I do shadow practice, and I shadow speak after her, and then I'm picking up words, like when she gives us when she was talking about the verb, what was that now? The verb fazer, eu fazer, fazem, elas fazem jantar junto. So you hear that, oh, okay, jantar is dinner, junto is what we say in Spanish, juntos. And so now there's that intent to say, okay, I can learn, even though the topic was on conjugation of this particular verb, but I can learn words from the sentence or the examples she's giving, and at the same time I can pronounce. It's very, very important that when you're listening to a language class or a language video, if you're learning by yourself, to always repeat what the teacher said. It's good to start in your primary language, so get an English video and start there, because it's easier to learn the concepts in your native tongue before you start speaking. And then now and then dabble into videos that are taught directly in the language for your shadow speaking. It works beautifully well. So that's what I wanted to share with you. That is the bullet I've beaten this week, and we're making good progress. So that's last week. Today's Monday. So that was the bullet I beat this week, last week, and that is the lesson I learned, and that is the progress I'm making on my language learning journey. I hope it helped you. If you know someone who is trying to be multilingual, especially for work or school, share the video with them. It could be a good tip they need to learn beyond their classes. And I'll see you guys pretty soon. Ok? Até logo. Obrigada.